So next up, we have a very exciting fireside chat with Mika Timonen, who is the director of Sulake and the founder of the Habbo NFTs project. Mika, come on up. And then we also have Russ Harding, who is the chief creative officer of the Emergent Games and also Maze Theory. And I was really excited as a J.K. Rowling fan to see that he's done some creative collaboration with J.K. Rowling in his 25-year history. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, yeah, this panel turned into a fireside chat, which is interesting. First, a little bit about me. I'm from Helsinki, Finland. I'm the NFT director of Sulake, and I'm the founder of Habbo NFTs. Habbo is a very, very old virtual world, established in 2000, so 22 years ago. Over the years, Habbo has had over 300 million registered users. Currently, we have about 600,000 monthly active users. So we are quite big in the Web3 space. Habbo is an OG Web2 metaverse, if you want to call it that. And we have started moving Habbo towards Web3. We dropped our first NFTs about a year ago, September 21, and we have been building and basically creating a new Habbo, Web3 Habbo, ever since. So we are going to release a new Habbo quite soon.
Oh, that's pretty amazing, actually, because I played Habbo probably back in the day, 22 years ago. So I'm Russ Harding. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Emergent Entertainment. And I guess my background is that I've been in the games industry for over 25 years, probably 28. But mainly working around immersive technologies. So I worked at Sony PlayStation, working at the PlayStation studios, working on things like AR and VR and new technology. And presently at Emergent, we're working in both VR and we're also working on Web3 projects. And we've had the real opportunity of being able to bring together a really amazing development team and a Web3 team, which I think is really unique in this space. So I have a lot of experience within the game development community and both the Web3 community. And we're here because we're bringing a product called Emergent, and we're bringing that to the Web3 audience. And for us, I suppose we're talking a bit about why games will deliver, gameplay and gameplay first is really important to us, and that user experience.
Yeah, the topic is the why game first will deliver success for NFTs in games. So especially from my point of view, we have had Habbo for, like I said, 22 years. And what we are struggling with currently is how to onboard the Web2 players into Web3. And I think the lessons that we are learning here will also help with the other Web3 games. And basically what we are doing is figuring out what are the hurdles when Web2 people jump into Web3. And I think all of us here know that it's really, really difficult to start in the Web3. So you need to get your wallet, you need to move some crypto, you need to even bridge some crypto to a L2, and so on and so on. So from a free-to-play player's perspective, people who don't really even spend money in the Web2 Habbo, it's really difficult to start the Web3 journey. And for us, this is something that we are constantly figuring out how we can improve and how we can lower the threshold. And to me, the game first basically means that we need to think about the gaming, the onboarding, the tutorials, everything, what we have learned in the Web2 space, and bring them also to Web3. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the biggest challenges with any game experience, whatever, is always about, is very player-centric. And we can see in the free-to-play space or in any gaming space, the first few minutes, seconds, getting into a game, the accessibility of getting into that experience is really, really important, because that's where people just will leave or not be, not want to continue with the game. I suppose for us, one of the, part of our journey is thinking about the user experience. And I suppose rather than game first, it's always about players first or about the audience first. And it's thinking about the different types of audiences that we're addressing within the game itself. Because I think, as the previous panel said, like, no one player is the same. So you will have some people that are more driven by the economics of a game. You might have some people that are more driven by the social side of the game. And it's thinking about those users and how the gameplay experience works for them. But ultimately, games have to be of good quality, and they're really hard to make.
It sure is, yeah. And we can start with the Web 2 based gaming features, how to build games and what we have learned in Web 2. But in the end, Web 3 is a little bit of a different beast, and there are different things that we need to consider there as well. So it's not just slap NFTs on top of everything and do tokenomics and you're done with the Web 2 features. But I don't think it will work that way. At the very first games might work fine with that, using season passes, battle passes, whatever you want to do with what you have learned from Web 2. But there's so many different new things that the Web 3 can offer. I think it will be very interesting to see what new types of game design mechanics there will be coming up in the next few years.
Yeah, I hope, because the game development community are really innovative when they come across new technologies. And I think the thing within the game community at the moment, if you would say there was an NFT in the game, it might be met with a lot of negativity because people have heard lots of negative things about NFTs. They've heard about just monetization. And players hate paywalls. They hate things that get in the way. But actually, if you said to the gaming audience, you could own the things that you held in that game. You could even create items that you could share with other people. You could have ownership over the community in the game. You could be part of that. You could remove publishers. One day that game could live with the community. There's so many different aspects that just don't get spoken about in the gaming community because at the moment there's a bit of a full stop with NFT as a word. But I think there's a lot of positivity, and new experiences that you can create with Web3. So we're on a 3-year development cycle. It takes a long time to make a game. And my hope is that our starting point now of where we're thinking about we're going to innovate within this Web3 space is not where we end up. We'll find lots of new and interesting ways that players can engage, have ownership. We can bring communities together to help build the game, where we can actually utilize sort of like the community to sort of like test what works, what doesn't work. These are things that happen in Web 2, but they're not as engaged with the community. People don't really own things.
Yeah, for sure. So, some stuff that I've been thinking about, how NFTs will affect the game design. So consider how the live ops works currently in Web 2. You need to release new items, let's say more powerful hammers, guns, whatever the game needs each month, so people will buy them. There's a power creep. You need to create more and more powerful items. But with Web3, and especially, I know that there's been lots of discussions about royalties recently, but let's say that the royalties, we figure it out, how it will work, and I think it will work within at least the in-game marketplaces. So there will always be royalties. So that could be one potential new monetization method for games. And that will definitely define the Web3 games and the monetization structures there. And if, let's say, you base on your game to free mints and royalties, the game design will be completely different from what you have been used to in Web 2, where you release the new, more powerful items all the time. So in Web 3, that would mean that there needs to be incentives for people to keep buying the old items. So the aftermarket is more lively, that people will need to buy the old items from other players. There will need to be some new types of live ops events. So this is, to me at least, well, I used to be a game designer, so as a game designer, this is really, really interesting to see what people will come up with in the upcoming years, and especially if the royalties will be a viable monetization strategy, how that will affect the game design.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because the more that you work within the game design itself and you start thinking about how NFTs can be utilised. I suppose it's more looking at players' behaviour and how they play in traditional games now, and looking at the things that they really value. And if the biggest value of any item is usually valued by the community in a game. So if you look at some of the big titles, if you even look at some of the old titles like RuneScape, how owning the golden cape is like the ultimate sort of like thing that you can earn. But that's the community that's driven the value of that item. It's not been driven by the publisher. It's something that the community have driven. But I also think that NFTs offer developers opportunities as well. They offer new ways to fund games. When you look at the present market, there's so much acquisition happening within the larger publishers who are just acquiring a lot of the studios. A lot of the funding is becoming more and more tricky. So what that allows is like indies and independent game creators who will come up with new and innovative ways of making games to find different ways of funding. And that, again, will propel things within Web3 because it will be seen as a way of being able to create those innovative games that won't normally fall onto, can't fall as easily onto console, can't fall through the usual distribution networks where you have to have relationships and partnerships. So I think there are a lot of aspects to NFTs that will offer success in games.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see where the innovation will come from. My guess is that the smaller, well, let's call them companies, projects, will drive the innovation and the bigger companies will follow. Currently, I don't think there's a reason for, let's say, Supercell, Clash Royales and Clash of Clans to start utilizing NFTs or bring NFTs because they are the big boys. They don't have to. But when there will be the first big player on the Web3, I think then the bigger companies will have to follow suit, and that I'm very eager to see where the innovation will come from. There's been lots of innovation in the past year. We have changed directions ourselves several times because there's so many cool new ideas coming from the different projects, from the community and everywhere. So this is a really fast-moving space, and it's going to be very interesting to see where this will go in the, let's say, even the next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. About 4 years ago, when we started in VR, people were, we started right at the bottom of the market, so bear market in VR, and it was, we've persisted in carrying through because we believe in the vision of VR as well as sort of like Web3, and you can see how over time that market has grown and grown and grown. And what you're starting to see now is the bigger publishers will start acquiring the studios that invested in that sort of like period, but that is the period of experimentation. And I think in this market now, the great thing about people focusing on building is it will flush out people that weren't genuine or aren't really focused on the experience of what they're creating. And you will start to see some great things like new innovation, new ideas around the gaming space develop.
Yeah, this might be an unpopular opinion. Something that I've been thinking about is the tokenomics in the games, and especially how they are done now, how that isn't really games first, and how it's more about basically creating value for those early adopters, and then those who come later, especially when the token values were super high in different games. I think it drove away new players from the games when you have to pay hundreds of dollars for basic items. Like I remember buying shoes to step in that cost like $1,000. As a starting player, especially free-to-play player, it's very difficult to even start playing the game if the level is there or the cost is on that level. So the tokenomics, I think, needs to be rethought, or people need to start thinking about how the tokens can support the gameplay, not just creating value for those who were there first, but how it can create a sustainable game. And my opinion is that the current way of doing isn't working, so that I think there needs to be some innovation there as well.
Yeah, I think if you look at games, large games, there were many sort of like MMOs where there were huge communities, but actually they spend as much time outside of the game as they probably do in it, probably talking and adding to the game. I think the trouble is if you don't get the model right, if everyone's earning out of the game and taking out of the game, you end up with nothing in the game itself. And what you really want is a community that wants to build the game themselves, where they start modding and adding. They decide the value of things that they're adding to that game, and it starts to create its own marketplace and community. And you're not paywalling it, you're not kind of pushing anything on people. People are adopting it themselves, and you'll end up with a community of sort of like super users who will actually create their own markets.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we run out of time, so
Yes,
it was so fun chatting with you.
that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Really insightful. Thank you.